fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. Of course, I'm Al Warren, and we've got Mr. Michael Hawley here because we're always talking horrific and murder and all bad stuff with Michael.
Of course, we love it, and horror is good, and this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, did you just wake up from your nap or something? Wasn't this like your afternoon nap?
How did you know that? Did you have cameras?
No, I don't need cameras. I can just tell the old guy, he sleeps a lot.
Did I yawn too much?
Yeah, sleep a lot and get up and sleep again, get up, drink some beer, and then go to bed,
I think drink some beer is more than the sleep a lot, though.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit of a bear belly.
Actually, it reversed now, finally. It's going backwards, so that's good.
Bear ass?
No.
I'm just saying. I don't know what that, Well, we've got another, he was a part-time host for us a little bit, filled in, did some work for us, and he writes a lot of horror. He's horrific, too. So, Mr. D.W. Gillespie, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. I feel like I'm coming home.
Hello, DW.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So, sit down and relax, okay? Stay calm. So now you've been writing, I noticed in the last that you did 2 books, and it's like, Give Me Something Good to Eat was something that came out, I think, a year or so ago, and then you've got Grin, brand new out there, and they're horror books. So what brought on this?
Well, I mean, when I was on the show before, that's been a couple years ago, most of my career have been focused on, different types of horror, kind of bouncing around over, different subgenres, I guess you'd say. And the previous stuff that I had worked on was more just straight adult horror. But even back then I had I really like monsters, which is something that sometimes works in adult horror books, but then they also really like, the stuff that's super popular seems to be like psychological horror and, it's serial killers and all that kind of stuff. And so gradually over the course of a couple of years, I just started making a transition into middle grade, which is where I'm at now. So that's like 8 to 12 year age group. Think about, your R.L. Steins and things like that. And so I kind of dipped my toes in it, and it ended up working really well, and ended up in a 3-book deal with Delacorte Press, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And so the first one was last year, which was Give Me Something Good to Eat, which is a kind of a love letter to Halloween. It's all about this town dealing with tons of monsters, and there's an evil witch, and, kids are the main characters, and they're trying to, the main character's trying to save his sister. All of it happens on Halloween night. And then the new one is called Grin, and that is, the first one is all about tapping into my childhood love of Halloween. This is my childhood and adult love of video games. So Grin, the short version of that is that it's about an arcade game that has the soul of a serial killer in it. So a kid is going to his uncle's retro arcade, and he's just excited to spend the week there and hang out and play video games, and they find this really strange game called Grin, and lots of fun, crazy stuff happens from there.
When you write these horror stories, let's start with the foundation. So you come up with kind of the idea of the story and how you kind of what's going to happen, and then you assemble characters or people in it, or do you have a character and you think about what you want to do with that character?
I definitely do lean towards the concept first. I think that, different pieces of storytelling fall in place as you progress as a writer. And I think for years, even when I was quite a bit younger, I started writing, I think I wrote my first novel when I was like 22 or something like that. Totally unpublishable, but I was
like mine now.
Either way, I was still trying, but I think I was always pretty good at plots. The pieces that fell into place as I went along the process were definitely character. Was kind of one of the last pieces that I was like, okay, now that I'm starting to get these characters, make them feel real. I'm starting to hit on all cylinders as a writer. And so, yeah, usually for me it is like some little seed of a concept that starts. And at any given time, I might have 3 or 4 or 5 of those bouncing around, and one of them will rise to the top, and I'll pick it up and say, all right, let's see if this will work.
22 years old. That would have been last century for sure.
Hey, no, you're right.
Just saying. Well, writing for adult horror compared to, teenager or younger, horror. So how do you go about that? Like, what do you do differently?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one of those where I kind of had to. I loved those types of books when I was younger, but I had to kind of start getting my head back in there a little bit, start reading more of the modern versions of what does a scary book look like for a 10-year-old nowadays. So that definitely helped, just kind of immersing myself in it. But I probably do take a slightly different approach to a lot of the other middle grade writers. I've actually gotten to know a lot of people and made some really good friends in the past couple of years. But just the simple fact that I started in adult horror, I do think that I approach it slightly differently and probably have a little bit more of an edge to it. I've heard, my agent and publisher both describe it as like upper middle grade. Like we're not, I've seen reviewers refer to some of these books as like YA. They're definitely not YA because you can get away with, almost anything in YA. But they are reaching slightly further. And so, for the original question of, how do I approach it differently? I kind of there's a couple of key things that you want to kind of sand down, but I think that the concepts, the real threat of danger, sometimes characters making it, sometimes characters not making it, like, I think that that's fine. Some middle grade writers think it's not. They're like, no, we're not, we're making this very safe for young readers. And my philosophy, and again, definitely inspired by the fact that I wrote adult horror first, but my philosophy is that if it's too much for them, they'll put it down. Kids know danger, kids know scary stuff. Kids they understand danger is around them, and they manage to make, I don't want to say make light of it, but not be broken by it. Scary things I don't think, necessarily break kids. They can change them and make them stronger. And so that is definitely my approach when it comes to this kind of book, is to not necessarily intentionally push the limit, but I do want to give them a real sense of danger and some real scares. Just probably without as much, gore and things like that, obviously.
Do you tone it down then, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there less violence? Is there less sex, for instance? Is there less that sort of thing? I
think sex is the main, probably like the biggest, like third rail of like, all right, this is not going to fly at all. You can have little crushes and, oh, this boy likes that girl, whatever, you can have that type of stuff. But in terms of like anything approaching, actual sex, that's off limits. The gore is an interesting one because it's definitely, some of it, you can get more than you would think. And I'll give you a funny example from Give Me Something Good to Eat. It's basically, again, this town is I won't go through the whole story, but there's tons of monsters. It's just monsters everywhere. And it's almost like Halloween for these monsters, like they're getting to hang out and trick or treat and, pretend like they're normal for a day. And there's a scene where, the main character, there's like an evil clown, and he cuts the clown's head off with a sword. And the way I described it was like, okay, blood shot on the wall and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, I don't know about that. We went back and forth on it a time or two with the publisher, with the editor. And they were totally fine if like, all right, you can cut the clown's head off, but how about he like picks up his head and starts laughing and runs away instead of just being a dead clown on the floor for the rest of the scene? And I'm like, you know what? I like it. That works. And so it's things like that where like, that's still a violent thing. That's still very, very PG-13, but it's not, it's not like Saw or anything like that.
Well, and not only that, I think that, at that age too, you have more imagination, like more is able to happen in your mind. Like I don't want to say it's more believable, but it's just easier to laugh at something like that or to get into stories like that, right? Or as you get more serious as an adult and you become, well, that's not real. I couldn't, you get cranky like Mike.
I was just wondering how, to make it the ending has to be kind of like a good guy ending or something to fit it in that group.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of leeway there too. But it is, again, not to spoil it, but the ending of Give Me Something Good to Eat I thought that they would have wanted to change the way that parts of it play out, because it is, from an adult perspective, it's like heavier, but from a kid's perspective, they're not necessarily thinking of the implications of maybe some of the parts of the ending. I think that you probably would get pushback on just like, really dour or really like, sad. And again, I'm thinking through it from the perspective of like a middle grade horror writer, where ultimately the point, in my opinion, is to like have fun and get scared. There are definitely dramatic, middle grade books and heavier, I don't even pretend to be in that category. Those are people that, actually win awards and stuff, not me.
But also, do you have a different sort of story to tell to a younger person than an older person? Like, do you have like, because a lot of times in horror, there's still a subtext. There's still some sort of a meaning. There's still some sort of a bad guy or a person that does things that are not necessarily good. And there's a story behind it. Do you do that with the young adult, more middle graders, as you say, horror as well? Or is it just all entertainment and fun? Yeah,
I mean, I think that my approach is always tell a good story first, and if there happens to be a message that's valuable in that, bring, like Stephen King talks about that in his On Writing book. You bring that out after the fact. You don't. I approach it not necessarily message first. I approach it story first, but. Between reading both of these books, and without necessarily intentionally doing it, I do think that there are some parallels and, things that I do think are, important to me for kids this age group, which you've got all the standard stuff like, be a good person and, be a good friend and all that. I think one of the big ones for me is that, there's been a trend over the course of, I don't know, 20 years maybe, for kids fiction and kids shows and kids movies where the bad guy is like nuanced to a point of like, well, maybe they're not the bad guy. And I think that's great for like adult stories. I think that, really complex, morally gray, maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, it can be super entertaining for adults. I personally, when it comes to kids, I do like that kind of good and bad, the bad guy 100% gets what they deserve at the end. Almost like old school Disney kind of approach. Whereas if you I don't know if you guys watch, if you got kids that age, if you watch much Disney stuff anymore, but like the old Disney stuff was very much along those lines of just like, oh, this person's bad. They love being bad, and you feel good when they get what they deserve. And nowadays it is very much more like, well, here's why they're bad, and here's the prequel of why they're bad, and don't you feel bad because you didn't like them or whatever. And so I think for kids it is really fun, and it teaches them a lesson of like, yeah, the good guys should win and the bad guys should lose, even though life isn't like that very often.
Yeah. Well, fool them while they're young, because eventually they'll grow up and realize. But I would say that you'd also attract, this kind of writing should attract baby boomers as well.
Yeah.
It sounds weird, but the thing is, I'm not quite that, but I love the old sci-fi and horror stuff, even from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
It's totally, kind of silly in places, and it's kind of a little unbelievable at times and all that, blah, blah, blah.
Well, even Stephen King's Silver Bullet, too, is kind of that. And I love that.
Yes. And I think people are hungry for that. I think the world has become so morally gray, and everybody's tired of it, that there is something nice about, okay, even if it's just for this book or this movie or whatever, it is nice to believe that, again, the good guys win and the bad guys lose.
Yeah, and it's straightforward. It is this and that, and there's no, yeah, you're right. There's that whole kind of blurred sort of aspect to the world that people get, I don't know, confused, or they're probably, bothered by it, and this is more straightforward. I think that's great. How do you feel about it? How does it work for you? Do you feel different writing one of these stories as compared to an adult horror?
Yeah, I think that I'm in the story that we're working on right now, that we're getting ready to kind of gone through. I haven't written this entire adult horror book, but I've kind of gone through the whole pitch process, and we have like a really nice summary, and we're about to start pitching it to publishers. It is probably the scariest thing I've ever written. It's got it's from a kid's perspective, so you kind of wonder if there's a supernatural element, but it can be read either way. You can see it as just a crazy person. It's about these kids in the woods kind of being taken captive by this crazy hill Tennessee guy. But it's very, you can read it as extremely straightforward. The adult perspective of it is a crazy guy is terrorizing kids. A kid's version of it is like, oh, well, maybe this guy's got something going on with him. So something supernatural going on with him, I should say. But the reason I'm even talking about that one is to say that, like, it's really fun to make that switch to because I haven't done, I've been focused on the middle grade stuff for a couple of years, to make that switch of like, all right, let's just make this thing as scary and as upsetting as possible. I want this bad guy to feel extremely realistic and hard to comprehend and all that kind of stuff. But I also, just part of my personality is that I just love, I guess it's because I'm just a big kid. I love monsters. I love the crazy supernatural stuff. I love aliens. I love all that. So being able, the perfect goal for me would be to get both of these tracks moving successfully. And I'm on the way. I mean, I've had adult books published, and now I've had middle grade books published. But it's really fun to have that outlet to do more playful things, I guess I should say.
Are you more at ease than writing adult?
I think at this point I'm pretty comfortable writing both. I wouldn't say that either one is necessarily easier or harder. The fact that I have been the third middle grade book on that 3-book contract is done. We haven't really talked about it yet. It'll be coming out next year, so should be having cover reveals in the next couple of months and all that kind of stuff. That was several years in a row of nothing but middle grade. And so it does feel a little bit like a homecoming, but if I get, stuck in the adult horror side for a while, I'll probably feel the same way if I go back to another middle grade book. So, I think both of them have been really, really fun to write in.
Do you ever look into yourself and wonder why you write horror and why you want to scare people? Is it like, I mean, I don't, just, we all do
Are you a
things.
serial killer?
Yeah. There are bodies in the basement. No, is there something that,
yeah, the ultimate goal is to just be a subject of an Alan Warren book. I mean, that's what it's all been leading to that.
Well, there you go. You're ready. Charles Manson is done. You're next.
Now, weirdly enough, I did have this conversation with my brother recently because he's not a huge horror guy at all. And, he definitely, as somebody who's not into it, he asked me that question not too long ago. And for people who don't like it, I could see almost the way that it makes you feel as just like, I don't want to feel bad. Oh, this is scary. This is bloody. This is whatever. I think the key for me is that there's pretty much everything that I've written, there's a certain amount of like joy in it and hopefulness to it. Like the book that I'm writing right now is probably the most, dour, hopeless book I've ever written. And honestly, after I write it, I'll probably be done with that for a while. I'll probably have that out of my system. So even though in most of my books, really scary, horrible, messed up things happen, there's almost always a scene or two that kind of get you in the feels, get you a lump in your throat or whatever. There's a joy and a hopefulness and it's almost like the kind of cliche of like, you can't really have, a sunny day without the rain. You can't have the light without the dark. And so I don't know how I ended up like this, but it is just a natural thing for me. Whenever I'm in a bookstore and looking around at the kid, the middle grade section, I still see, the other day Grin was next to, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book. That's probably, I don't know if you guys remember that one. For my age group, that was huge. And it was, I still get the same sort of feeling of being a kid and looking at something that's a little dangerous and a little scary and being like, I don't even know if I should be, checking this out or not. I just never really lost that feeling.
It's kind of like you're really writing a Harlequin romance where the characters have a bad day, and that part was left out in the book.
I just skipped that part.
Yeah, that's all. No, but do you think it's reflective then? Because you said that, the thing you're doing now is like the darkest, dowry. It's really deep, dark, and not so much the shining light at the end of the day. So do you think that's reflective of what's going on in, let's say, your world, like the country, do you know what I'm saying? Does that play a part in it, or do you think it's totally separate?
I mean, I definitely think that it's impossible nowadays to not, absorb this stuff, even if you, weirdly enough, and not weird at all, actually, but I did totally delete Facebook last week. I was like, I can't.
Oh, that's good for
yeah, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, I mean, those feelings and frustrations are part of, doing something darker like the book I'm working on now is like, okay, let's get some of this out. Let's get some of these frustrations out. But again, it'll probably be somewhat temporary for me. I don't think that I'll ever be known as the absolute, gnarly guy who just messes you up with every book. I think that ultimately I probably would be known as, if I'm known at all, known as, I'm getting ahead of myself there, but just known as somebody who is, has a certain amount of just hopefulness. And again, that sort of sense of wonder, that sense of, being a kid, being what it feels like to be afraid as a kid. I think that's a big part of my work.
Do you think the kids are changing? Like, yeah, of course they're in a different world and there's, it's a different life than what we had, with the whole social media and internet and all that stuff. But do you think at heart, in general, kids are different than how, let's say, we were in the 80s or the 70s?
Yeah, I think that there's no way to even comprehend how much the world has changed around the kids. My kids jokingly say, and they might not be joking sometimes, but they're like, man, I'll just tell them stories. And they'll be like, man, I wish I wish I grew up in the 80s or the 90s or whatever. And I'm like, y'all got certain things that are better. You got certain things that are worse. That's the same for every generation. I do think that there is, I don't even think, I mean, the research kind of, shows that this age group is more, depressed, isolated, worried about the future, all that kind of stuff. And I think that I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a cause and effect sort of thing, but it is very, very well known that getting boys to read at that age is just so hard to do nowadays. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if the kids are different. I do know that when they get opportunities to experience things like books or, just something simple like hanging out with your friends without a parent over your shoulder, or, having a space, like they don't really have spaces to hang out anymore. Like they don't have malls. They don't have, arcades. They don't have that kind of stuff. So that whenever they get a chance to see some of those types of things that I grew up with and you guys grew up with, and it was kind of the standard of the human race for years and years and years, that they love it, they jump at it, and so I don't know. There's part of me that thinks that no, the kids really haven't changed at all. That we have just in quotations have just made a much worse world for them.
One of the things I think about, I like movies or shows even with a horror, even as a kid, was when I was done and I realized, oh, my life is not that scary. So it actually made me feel better that there's a world that's worse than what I live in.
But not now.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say? Is that what you're trying to say here?
I mean, it'd be cool to have monsters, and that's why I love Halloween with all my, I really do it up during Halloween.
Yeah.
But it's but it still is kind of nice that, I'm glad that does not exist.
Well, and the main character in Grin, actually, one of his struggles is that he talks a lot about anxiety, and that is, I feel, again, way more common in kids than it used to be. And he likes horror-focused stuff. Like the book's mostly about video games, but he really loves like scary video games. And talks a little bit about movies and stuff too. But he even, kind of calls out at one point that what you just said, which is the safety of, and again, it's the irony of the approach that I think some writers take that is probably just not, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just, I disagree with it, which is, we got to make this book super safe for kids. And I'm like, the book is already safe for kids. The book is just, it's a book. And so my opinion is that, like, if you're a kid who's like, again, dealing with other stuff, let's push you get stronger by pushing a little bit out of your safe zone. So let's maybe this book can push them a little bit further than they were used to before. And afterwards they're like, it was fine. And that was a fun little scare. It was just like a roller coaster. It's terrifying while you're on it, but as soon as you're off it, you're like, oh, that was fun. So that's how I approach it.
Being a parent, do you think that helped you out too with writing books like this? Yeah, and it worked out in a really kind of serendipitous sort of way where my kids, I mean, you guys know the lead time for, depending on the publisher, I mean, I think I signed the contract for Give Me Something Good to Eat, and then the book didn't come out for, I don't know, almost 2 years or something like that. So the timing of that has been really, really nice, because my kids are 14 and 15 now. And so they're just out of the age, but as I was writing it, I was like, I'm just writing, I'm hearing them talk, and that's really helping to inform these kids.
Well, and you kind of got to look at it. The kids have a different world. I mean, if your kids, for instance, at that age, they grew up with, politics and the way it's going with the way people are nowadays. And then they had, so you had Trump, and then you had a pandemic, and now you have Trump again, and you have National Guard, and you have all this stuff going on. So their whole life is all about, there's just a lot of stuff going on. We had shopping malls and heavy metal music.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like we didn't worry about these things.
And
I
I
miss malls.
Yeah. Totally. And I tell my kids, they understand because you can't not talk about some of this stuff because it's just everything. But they understand like where me and my wife stand politically. But I will also hear them as early as probably 5th grade, maybe 4th grade, coming home from school and saying, well, so-and-so likes this person and so-and-so likes this person. And my message to them is not go back to school and tell them why they're wrong or they're right. My message to them is stop talking about this. You don't understand any of it. You don't know you don't understand politics. Be a kid. It's one of the greatest crimes that my generation has done is infect their kids with 24/7 politics so that children who don't understand any of it are just arguing with each other on the playground. And drives me nuts. Drives me absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it's probably the best way to do it. People, you're young, you got to have a little bit of fun, and that's what being young is. Going to school and having a good time. But
watch Stranger Things again. Then they'll see where those malls were. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's subtle changes, but then when you look back, you realize how different things are. But it's slow, day at a time, But it's been a lot of changes now. So anyway, listen, let's talk about how people find you. I guess obviously not Facebook, but what social media do you have? Do you have a website? Do you have where do they find DW?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm still on Facebook. I'm just not. I do not have it on my phone anymore, and I'm not checking it every day. But you can find me on Facebook. If you're trying to just find some info about me, where my books are, just the different titles. Just check my website out, dwgillespie.com. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm probably more active on Instagram at the moment. I'm trying to think. I'm on TikTok too, but I haven't done much on there. So
yeah,
you might be disappointed if you follow me on TikTok.
Yeah, I know. I follow myself and I'm disappointed, so I know. Okay, well, listen, so the latest books, Give Me Something Good to Eat and The Grin, and we've had D.W. Gillespie, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was a great conversation.
Thanks.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.